It's an honor, privilege to be the host. Although this is a small campus, newcomers like you have different ways of losing yourself on this small campus. Because all you see around you is mostly red, and letters of the Latin alphabet don't provide a sense of orientation. So if ever you need to find some direction, for example, to find a spot, have a cigarette, to have a good cup of coffee, answer the call of nature, or to get some information, please feel free to approach us. We'll be more than pleased to be of service to you. Okay? And this building where we are in now is situated at the southern name of mainland Hong Kong. And 300 meters from here, down south, is the harbour. And across the harbour lies the island of Hong Kong. So when people talk about Hong Kong, normally they are talking about that side, okay? And it's that side, 175 years ago, the British Navy found it and made it a small piece of the British Empire. In those days, and 175 years ago, especially the boat people, they call the island Fragrant Harbour, i.e. Hong Kong, i.e. Shanghai. That's Hong Kong. Probably because of the presence of fresh water and the timber that's produce a very good smell aroma. And when I joined the workforce about 40 years ago, from time to time I bump into people living on the island, who are very reluctant to cross the sea and come to this side of the harbor. Okay? To them, this is the rotten and the unfragrant side, of the harbor of Hong Kong. There are still people, like this today, albeit the numbers getting smaller and smaller. And on this note, I congratulate you because in order to be here this evening, you must have crossed more than a small harbor. You must have flown over continents and oceans, right? And you are those people. When you see a harbor, you'll build a bridge to cross it. When there is a big mountain before you, you'll drill a tunnel to go through it. You and I, we are people who yearn to go to the other side. And it is this sort of yearning that about 10 years ago, in the summer of 2005, that I flew to UK, to Roxton. And this trip, so Tina's laughing, it's 10 years ago, my goodness. It's this trip that enabled us to build a bridge between Baruch, CCI, and my department. For the past 10 years, my experience with this conference is that I've seen a lot of these good things happening around me. So let us look forward in the next few days to have more of this good stuff in addition to the cross-fertilization of ideas and insights. And I also wish to make an announcement. My colleague and good friend, Professor Chen, sitting alone there. Why are you sitting alone there? She will be the director of the Hong Kong chapter of CCI next month. Let's give her a And thereafter, I'll assume the grand title of the founding director. So thank you very much and enjoy your stay in Hong Kong. Now it's Michael's turn. Do you want to use this mic? I'll take it. Thank you, Daniel.
Michael Goodman. Well, gute Hanyu. Aber ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch. Y yo hablo español un poquito. So, if it's all right with all of you, I'll continue in English. I want to thank Daniel and PolyU for hosting this CCI conference. The first time that we've been in Asia, although our Asian colleagues have been to our conferences in Europe and in the United States, at least for the last 10 years, if not more. I want to thank Tina Janest and for making this all possible. I want to thank Daniel's team, particularly Valentina Chan and Wilson. Yep, where is Wilson somewhere? I guess he's behind the Cindy Nagai and Patrick Ng and Doreen Wu have been colleagues for a long time. The proceedings that you have in your packet, and we're one of the few conferences that has a refereed proceedings that is published at the time of the conference. Those of you who've been to conferences, you may recall that the proceedings was supposed to come out at the conference and came out 3 or 4 years later if it came out at all. So we're very proud of that. We're very proud of the work and diligence that Tina Janest as editor and Ross Petlin as editor has. Can't hear me now, right? Can you hear me now? Should I start all over? No, it's okay. This one's better. They look like a talk show host when you do this. Which brings to mind a very funny commercial, which I won't change. We can do this one. I'm okay. I'll be a talk show host. I don't mind doing that. Yes, Tina Janest and Ross Petlin. Tina and her team of graduate students from Baruch College, at least one of whom is here, Kiara McMillan, and several of our graduate students helped as well. Their names are in the proceedings, and also Ross Petlin and her students and alumni from the University of Queensland. Thank you, Ross, for that. There are also a number of people who have contributed to the success of the conference from the academic side, and those are members of our program committee. And the ones who are here, Jesper Felkheimer from Lund, Sweden. Jesper is right over here. Roger Hutt, all the way from Arizona, so the weather is the same now that you have in Arizona as here, so the heat is not that bad for you. Alessandra Masi from Milan, Italy, and IULM. Jan Jin from the Virginia Commonwealth University. They all take back seats, but they never take a back seat to anyone. Augustine Pang, Gus Pang from Singapore. Gus has been a member of the program committee for numerous years. Ross Petlin is also a member of the program committee. Pat Scott. Pat. There's Pat, right on cue. Very good, Pat. Take a seat right over here.
I'm glad I got to sneak in.
Yeah, you can sneak right in. Daniel So has been a member of the program committee for a long time. And Don Swanson, is he here yet?
He's coming.
He'll be coming tomorrow. There are, and we thank a lot of people because it takes a lot to put off an international conference. Our corporate sponsors, and they are in your program, and they're also conference sponsors. The Emerald Publishing Group from the UK, Pat Scott's, can I call it an organization?
Absolutely.
Okay, it's an organization. The Association for Business Communication and Bertha DuBabcock from around the corner here in Hong Kong. Bertha and I are part of ABC. And Pfizer. John Santoro is our chief CCI representative at Pfizer. It's not, they lost the bid for AstraZeneca, but
You win a few, you lose a few, and you'll get the next one. Should be in the food business, John. Hillshire Farms trying to consolidate that business. We have numerous corporate sponsors for CCI. Amgen Incorporated. We're pleased to welcome our brand new sponsor, Con Edison. For those of you who are not familiar with New York City, they keep the power on. They're named after our inventor of the electric light, Thomas Alva Edison. Honeywell, the J.M. Smucker Company, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer Incorporated, Prudential Financial Incorporated, and Siemens Corporation. We also have numerous academic sponsors, the Australian Journal of Communication and the Writing and Editing Program at the University of Queensland, the Baruch chapter of CCI, the Hong Kong Polytechnic chapter of CCI, the Center for Corporate Communication at the School of Business and Social Sciences at Aarhus University in Denmark. And the colleagues in Denmark have been with us pretty much since the beginning. And I want to thank them for their continuous support. There are 4, and they're a small contingent this time, but you'll recognize the Danes right away. They're right over here. The Corporate Communication Department of Communication at Aalto University School of Economics in Finland. The Department of Strategic Communication at Lund University in Sweden. That's keeping up our Scandinavian thing. I attribute the fact that there's so many people in Scandinavia doing corporate communication is because the winters are long and the alcohol is strong. Not to be outdone, we have an ongoing partnership with IULM University in Milan, Italy, and Alessandra Mazzi and her colleagues. As well, in the United States, we have the Richard T. Robertson School of Media and Culture at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. So shout out for Richmond, Virginia on that. And last but not least, the Wee Kim Wee School of Communication and Information at Nanyang Technical University in Singapore. Thank you all for that support. There are other members in the program, our board of advisors and others, and there are also other members listed in the proceedings. But I have a hard stop in about half an hour at 7:45. I've been told that we have to go elsewhere to eat. And you're probably hungry. Well, you're not. You had a little bit of hors d'oeuvres, so you might, by the time I'm done, I hope you're hungry because we have dinner for you all. Just a note on my remarks tonight. The title of this is Communicating Strategic Change, the Continuum of Reputation, Issues Management, and Crisis Management is built on a positive corporate culture. Just to preface my remarks tonight, let me mention 3 items as background. And if any of you who came to Hong Kong today, if you're familiar with the English language newspaper here in Hong Kong, The Standard, very reputable newspaper. I like to read it here. Sometimes I pick it up in New York because there is a huge expat community in New York City. We get newspapers from all over the world. Of course, if you don't get the hard copy, you can get it online. There were several items today in the Standard. One is titled Google Disruption in China for June 4th, 25th anniversary of Tiananmen Square. I'm going to Beijing on Friday. I doubt that they are going to have any mention of it. In fact, I know they won't have any mention of it. How do I know that? Because the artist, this is also an article in the Standard today, the artist Gao Jin has been detained by the Chinese government. He was one of the original protesters in Tiananmen Square. He had been a participant in the hunger strike in the week that preceded Tiananmen Square on June 4th. And those of you who are Australian, you may know that he is an Australian citizen, and the Australian government has protested this vociferously. Yes. The Financial Times on May 31st and June 1st, Saturday and Sunday, the weekend edition, had a full-page interview with Yao Jin. I suggest that you read it. He's a very soft-spoken man, a very gifted artist, and the interview is telling on a lot of levels about the way we think of the past and the way that we understand the past. There's also a full-page set of reviews in the Financial Times. 3 books have come out because this is the 25th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square. I have a hard time understanding what to call it here in China, but the incidents in Tiananmen Square. The title of the 3 reviews is under the subhead, The Secret History. The instance that is discussed in these books 25 years on is a distant memory for a lot of people here, a lot of people in China, a lot of people in the United States. Many of us who were around 25 years ago remember it vividly. It's a lesson about how history can become a fading memory and sometimes faded into oblivion. The second item as background is, you're wondering, is he ever going to get to the speech? Yeah, I can make the speech short. The quadruple bottom line for sustainable business enterprises. And one of the interesting things about and I say quadruple bottom line, many of you are familiar with the triple bottom line. You're familiar with financial reporting, which has been around for corporate life for more than 100 years. Initially, annual reports were very thin. They said, we're making money, that's all you need to know. But over the last 30 years, we've added to the credit of the European Union, which mandated 2 other reports for corporations or publicly held companies, an environmental report. And the environmental reports are how the corporations are doing as stewards of the environment. One of the things that threatens urban environments throughout the world is pollution. Here and abroad, I noticed this is, I think, my 7th trip to Hong Kong over the last several years, and the air is cleaner. I was told on one trip when the air was clean that it was because the economy was down in Guangzhou and they've closed 20,000 factories and they just weren't pumping out pollution like they used to. Be that as it may, people who study the economy, particularly the London School of Economics, has published 2 books on the importance of the environment and urban life as the generator for economies throughout the world. And those are, the one book is the Endless City, and the other book is Living in the Endless City. And the notion or the premise that they have is that if we don't take care of cities and the physical environment that we have, clean air to breathe, clean water, and an infrastructure that supports this, that economies will wither and die. The third is the social bottom line. And the social bottom line, many of you have studied as the corporate social responsibility. And corporate social responsibility is the role of corporations as good citizens. It's recognized now that corporations owe the communities that they are in a certain obligation to be good neighbors and good supporters of that community in many ways. So the larger corporations, the sustainable corporations, the ones that have been around for 100 years or more, are committed to an aggressive social responsibility campaign. And the fourth one, this has been added by the UN Global Compact over the last year or so, 2 years, is an ethical bottom line. Not only do we need a corporation to be financially sound. If you're not making money, you can't do business, so that's the first. Not only do you have to have an environment that is sustainable and habitable by human beings, not only do you have to have a society in which people can thrive and grow intellectually and commercially, but this is all underpinned by a political and ethical environment that fights against corruption. So on the eve of the World Cup in Brazil next week, we have a corruption scandal with World Soccer. Why are we not surprised? We should be surprised, and we should be aghast, and we should fight against it, because corruption in all of its forms undermines an ability for us to be able to work with one another, and that ability for us to work with one another is trust. Everyone talks about it, and everyone deals with the whole concept of trust. The third is adaptation to radical change. If you haven't noticed in corporate communication, people aren't doing what they did 5 years ago, or even 3 years ago, because some of the tools and technologies that we have now weren't available until just a few years ago. And it has changed a great deal. So there are 5 forces that we deal with in corporate communication. And, my co-author, Peter Hirsch, and I have written about this, and we have a book coming out that enhances this notion that the 5 forces begin with globalization. That's not new. Actually, globalization hasn't been new since the 18th century. And if you're Chinese and you live in Thailand, you know that your ancestors came over because a result of globalization in medieval times. The second force is the World Wide Web, or the media model. Newspapers, mass media are struggling with what is the media. Several of them have solved that, notably the New York Times, notably other institutions have solved the conundrum of everyone wanting information free, but the expense of having to have a staff of qualified reporters that can determine for us what is news and what is newsworthy. The third item is the networked enterprise. This is the business model. Business models have changed dramatically. Sometimes for the good, sometimes not. Many businesses don't make anything anymore. They are holding companies, they are driven by finances, and they're driven by mergers and acquisitions. And many of these organizations, over the years, have created some of the scandals that I'll mention a little bit later. The fourth item is uncertainty and risk, and I put in parentheses fear. People are afraid of the volatility of financial markets. They're afraid of what will happen in financial and commercial markets because of this volatility. Things aren't as predictable as they were, and it's very difficult for large multinational corporations to be able to work for the future when they have a hard time understanding what's going to happen tomorrow. There's also political turmoil in Western democracies and the developing world, and this creates high levels of risk. So if you're from Europe, the events that are happening in Ukraine and Russia and parts of the old Soviet Union create a great deal of uncertainty for you. where the energy will come from, what the energy will be, who your trading partners might be, how much is it going to cost to live, where will I be able to live